I wake up every minute with the fever dreams. I put the mind to a limit where it needs to be. I work, I got vision I don't need to see. I'm picking mind over matter, I believe in me. I need to find more hours in the day to breathe. Need to find more power in the way I be. And when my mind turns out with the painful scenes, I need to scream out loud, I can't stop me. I wanna be the greatest like Rocky. You know I leave them all hating like a hobby. I'm out here making moves like a lobby. And if you ain't with me, it's you lost, see. I got my mind on the facts, I'm a python, grab what I like real fast. Choke until I have everything I attack, everything that I lack, everything that I want and I see, matter of fact.
Cause I'm my own worst enemy, only if I let it be. I can control anything if I can just think carefully. I control my destiny. Deep up in my mind I manifest it. Every morning I wake up obsessed and
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for you if you are new here. Thanks for watching the video. Today we are going to be painting this engine bay on the srt4 Neon. I've been working off camera on it a little bit, got everything prepped, masked off, cleaned, ready to spray. All I've got to do is start making paint. Mixing the paint up to spray it. So I want to walk over what I did a little bit. If you haven't watched the other video, the video before this explains how I prepped it. I want to go over that a little bit here so you guys can understand what needs to be done in order to get a really good finish out of your paint jobs. Even with something that's like this, where it's kind of most of it's going to be hidden, you're not going to see it, you might not be like, oh, I don't care. You always want to go that extra step in anything you do, paint-wise and prepping mostly, because it's going to dictate how everything else comes out in the end. And just because you don't see it, my rule of thumb is treat it like you are. So one little thing that I want to kind of nip in the butt here real quick that I ran into with this car, I ran into it when I painted the body of the car as well. It had a custom paint job on it already. The guy told me he did the job correctly. Shouldn't have any issues, because I told him when I bought the car that down the road at some point I was going to paint it. And he was like, oh yeah, I did everything right. I didn't do anything. You should have no problem sanding it down. I took everything apart when I painted it, so should have no problem putting your paint after it's prepped over top of mine. Well, that wasn't the truth. To be honest with you, it was pretty much on the borderline of being not done right and being done right using good paint. The dude I've been painting for years, and you know, swore up and down that it was, you know, I could sand it down, block it down, fix what I needed to fix, and then paint it, which, you know, was farthest from the truth. After I got done taking the car apart, and you know, the door handles weren't even taken out of the car, all the moldings on the car, the mirrors, nothing was taken off the car pretty much, and the door jambs were just kind of like, honestly, I took a blowgun to the door jambs and the paint just started flaking off of it with the, you know, with just compressed air. So that just tells you right there the car wasn't prepped right. Now, I don't know if he did the door jambs or he just painted the outside of the car, but I know for a fact, like the moldings, door handles, trim were not taken off the car, because once I took those parts off the car, the factory silver was underneath that. So that's just an indicator that didn't take them off, didn't prep behind them. And the problem with that is it creates a hard edge line, and you know, you're asking for trouble pretty much, because it's going to fail at some point, whether it's going to peel, chip, whatever may the case be. So you always want to take things apart 100%, act like you're going to see it even though you don't see it. And where I'm getting with this is like the door jambs, for instance, when I blew everything off with the blowgun, nothing was prepped right. It looked like it was just spray can rattle black, and I ran into that same issue on this core support. As you can see, some of it is still there, but for the most part, I was able to get all of it off and feather edged and cleaned up and prepped to where it's going to actually, the paint's going to stick. So don't trust what people say entirely, you know, especially when buying cars nowadays. There's a lot more used cars on the market now than ever, and people are just kind of hacking them out to get them sold. So you might be buying somebody else's headache. And, you know, a lot of people believe that doing what they did to it is the right way when entirely it's not. Like, for instance, you know, a big thing going around on YouTube like right now, unless it's not going around anymore, but there's a lot of wannabe painters out there who are buying these Rust-Oleum rattle can, you know, kind of like the hyper blast cans or whatever you want to call them, and painting cars with them. And they're not taking anything off the car. They're not, you know, prepping it right. They're not fixing anything. And you see them just blasting these cars with rattle can, you know, and that's a clear indicator that, you know, I don't care if the car's a piece of crap or not, and you're just doing it just to make it look decent. It is making it a headache for the next person who buys that car and possibly gets it painted or worked on or anything like that. Because one, you know, you can't take it anywhere. Nobody's going to work on your car when it's been rattle canned. And what I mean by that is automotive paint solvent. It's, you know, you can't replace rattle can acrylic paint with automotive paint. You just can't do it because for one, it doesn't adhere right. You can't sand it. So if you got a car or you have somebody that has blasted something with rattle can and you want to paint it the correct way, or you bought a car and you found out that it's been rattle canned or whatever, and painted really poorly, you're pretty much having to strip that entire car down pretty much back. You know, you got to take all that paint off of it, and that's no fun because, like I said, that shit it does not sand worth a crap at all. So you're making it more of a headache for the next person. The shop that's going to do it, or if you're going to do it yourself, you're going to be spending double, if not triple, the time and labor to get that stuff off, to get it prepped right, because they're going to go through more sandpaper. It's going to take you twice as long, if not 3 times as long, to get it prepped right in order to get whatever needs fixed or painted or whatever, because you cannot put automotive grade paint over that rattle can acrylic stuff you see people blasting. Rust-Oleum, anything that comes in a rattle can, I don't care what it is, you cannot paint a car with it. I mean, you can, but you're just, like I said, you're making it a headache for the next person. And this is a testament. The door jams I kind of knew about because I found that out earlier on, and I was like, oh, it's just the door jams. But once I started working on them, it took me 3 times as long because I had to completely strip all that old paint off of there, and it didn't want to sand. It just gummed up on me. Same thing with this core support. It didn't want to sand. It just gummed up the sandpaper. I was going through sandpaper like crazy trying to strip this stuff off. And then at the very end of it, once I got it so thin, I was able to take wax and grease remover and a red Scotch-Brite and soak it with wax and grease and red Scotch-Brite it, and that pretty much made it look like, you know, made it just sand off real easy, made a feather edge real easy. But it's a headache to deal with. And, you know, I don't care, like I said, I don't care who you are or what you think you know. If you are making videos or painting cars with rattle cans, then you just don't need to be around cars at all, because you're just making it more of a headache for the next person. And a lot of times, especially with these YouTube videos, you know, from 50 feet away, they're showing these cars. They're not really actually showing you what they look like. And I'm going to tell you right now, it looks just as bad. It's worse than a wrap job. But wrap jobs, you can tell they're orange peely, they're textured. Anything that's underneath of them sticks out. Same thing with those rattle can videos. They only show you the good parts of it, and a lot of times they'll show you and they'll have millions of views on it, and I'm like, why in the world does this have millions of views? Because you can see the dents they didn't fix, the runs in the paint, you know, all the dirt that's in the paint, you know, it's just crazy to me. And then when you get somebody that does a good job on something, they post a video, post their work, and you can see how nice it is just in the video, let alone not in person. And they just don't, you know, that doesn't get anything. So hopefully my videos will help you guys out a little bit, show you guys the correct way. I'm not 100% perfect, so don't quote me on that, but I do know a lot. I've been doing this for 20 years. So if you're new and you're willing to learn something and you want to do this stuff correctly, then I'm going to try to, you know, preach to you guys the ways that it should be done. Now this engine bay is a little bit different than doing it outside of the car because it's a lot of electrical stuff, mechanical stuff that you got to remove. That's half the battle, is taking everything apart. Same thing with when you're taking a car apart. The mirrors, the door handle, the doors, the windows, all that stuff has to come out of it. It's the same way. So no, I would not treat anything just because I'm doing something that's going to get mostly covered up. So we've got everything out of this engine bay that I need out of here. These things that are wrapped up, like this is the heater core. This is another line for the heater core, I believe, for the coolant. This is the AC block. I'm leaving that in the car for now just in case somebody down the road wants to put the AC back in it. This is just a plastic boot from the inside of the car for the steering rack to go over and bolt to. So everything else is completely out and done and sanded and prepped. I first off went through with the red Scotch-Brite and some soap and water, and I Scotch-Brited everything to get all the dirt and grime because there was grease, oil, grime, dirt everywhere, and especially back in these corners underneath where the subframe mounts to, back here in the tunnel. All that stuff was just caked with crap. So you could take wax and grease remover as well with the red Scotch-Brite and Scotch-Brite everything really well. It'll clean it and then it'll somewhat scuff it. A lot of cars do not have clear coat. They just have paint and with a little bit of hardener in it. So it's a lot easier to prep than outside of the car. You have to deal with clear coat. And then after I got all that and cleaned all that up, I took a red Scotch-Brite again, just by the Scotch-Brite by itself, and I scuffed everything down really, really well. You want to get nooks and crannies. You want to get back as far as you possibly can to get all this stuff prepped to make sure that your paint's going to stick to this. And then after that, I took some 400 on a DA, and I buzzed down every little scratch and everything I saw. And anything I could get to it, I buzzed it down with the DA real quick, blew it off, cleaned it up, and anything I couldn't get to, I took 400 on a Scotch-Brite pad, and I went through it by my hand, and I Scotch-Brite, and I scuffed it that way with 400. Knowing that I'm going to have to seal this, 320 is the lowest you can go on a DA, and seal it and paint it and not have to primer it at all. Sealer is different from primer. For one, sealer is needed for a correct color match on vehicles, as well as corrosion protection against bare metal. If you got a lot of bare metal, sealer will help with that, as well as it's a mechanical bond that you're creating, so you need that sealer to bite into that metal and that paint. So sealer is great for that as well. So I seal. Compressor's going to go off here in a minute. Let me cut it off. But I seal everything, no matter what it is. If it is something that needs sanded down and repainted, it's getting sealed. So I'm one of those guys that does that. That's just how I am. I am not going to put base coat over a primer that's been prepped. I don't care how nice it is. I'm not doing it. It's always getting sealed first, and then color, and then clear. I'm going to let this run off for a minute. I'll be right back. All right, so that ended. That was just so loud. I didn't want to continue the video, but I'm just one of those people that I believe sealer is there for a reason. I do not skip a step. Primer I use when I use body filler. Anything that's been used with anything lower than 220 sandpaper needs that primer to get it to get away from the sand scratches, seal in that body work things like that. But something like this, where I've used nothing but 400 on it and a red Scotch-Brite pad, I can totally seal right over top of this and not have any issues. And then what I do, if I have anything that's a big bare metal spot, I'm not talking like a little area, but I'm talking like a big spot that's bare metal. I've got some rattle can etch primer, automotive etch primer, that I use, and I'll just spray a couple coats over it before I seal it to really let that etch into that metal to protect it. But if it's something like smaller, I don't really worry about it. Sealer will take care of all that for me. And you always want to put one coat of sealer on it and then let it flash off and go to your paint. So now that we got that covered, we're going on to mix and paint. So like I said, if you're new here and you're not aware of what I use for paint, I'm going to show you right now the system that I have. It's, in my eyes, it's the best of the best. There are other custom paint systems out there that are just as good, but this is my choice because I've always wanted one of these when I started painting, and now that I have one, it's just awesome, especially when you're doing things like this and you're having customers come in. You can show them what you use. You can pretty much mix anything on the fly. So having one of these, if you're able to get one of these and have one in your shop, it's great to have, just because, like, especially for this job right here, the color that I'm painting this engine bay, and the car is going to get painted down the road again, the same color, so it's going to be a totally different color than what's on the car already. But I won't show that till the end. But I'm able to grab what I need off this bank and mix whatever I want to. I don't have to stick to a formula. I don't have to stick to anything. I can custom make any color I want to, and that's why I love this. So what I have is a House of Color mixing bank that is, I'm going to say it's about 85% full. There's some things that House of Color offers that I do not have with their Shimmer and 2 line, just because I was able to go through and nitpick it and pick out what I really wanted. So I didn't entirely buy everything on this system, but everything that I do have is there for a reason, because I know I'll use it. I wasn't going to buy some stuff that was just not going to be able to, I wasn't going to use it. So no point in doing all that. But I used the House of Color line, and the clear that I used from them is the UC21. And I've got my mixing station all up here. I've got everything ready to mix paint. I've got some sealer mixed up already, so I'm ready for sealer. And then I'm going to be doing the color mix. And what I'm going to be doing with that is I'm going to be doing a spray out, because I'm not entirely too sure of what way I want to go with this. I know the color that I want, but as far as the pearl and the metallics in that color, I'm not sold yet, but I'm thinking this is a good candidate for what I'm wanting to use. It's not anything they offer that I know. It's a custom formula that I'm going to mix. So anything that's custom mixed, whether it's mine or a customer's, I go through and I write everything down. That's why I have a piece of paper here with a Sharpie. Everything that I'm going to mix in on my scale is going to get written down, and it's going to get stored and saved in an envelope. That way, if anything, like a customer's car, if anything comes back that needs fixed, I know exactly what I did and how I mixed it. And that's how us custom painters keep track of their colors. A lot of guys will have a cabinet like this 3M cabinet or this House Color cabinet, and they'll have it full of just paint that they've saved over the years, because they understand if that customer comes back, it gets in an accident, rock chips, anything that needs paint work done, and they label it to that customer so they know when they go back to paint it, they can just pull that can out or whatever they need to do and mix up that color again. Same thing with that truck I just got done. Everything is documented. There's like 10 different colors on that car. Most of them are candies, and most of them are custom mixed candies. I didn't go through the book and pick out a color and be like, hey, I'm using that. No, I went through and I custom mixed everything on that truck in every color. So I wrote everything down, the formulas that I used and how much I put in them, and all that stuff. It's a lot of legwork, but in the end, it'll save you a ton of time. So stop what you're doing, do that extra bit of work, and go through that and get it written down and stored to where you can keep it forever, because you just never know. So that is it for that. So, and I got a big order today, kind of a big order, but I got some more clear. Got 2 more gallon kits of clear because I use this clear like crazy. So that just came in today. So that'll be added to my bank up here. But yeah, this is what I use. I don't really shy away from using this. Now when I airbrush, I've got a bunch of different airbrush paints that I use. Most of it is House of Color, but I use waterborne colors as well, like Createx and things like that, just to get certain colors that I need. And I've used a lot of different paints in the past. This is just my preference for my home shop, so that is what I use. So I'm gonna stop rambling here. I want to get this thing ready. It's also ready, but I want to get this curtain drawn back in the booth, get the booth turned on, let it get some pressure built up, and tack this thing off and get some sealer sprayed and start mixing my color up and get it on the car, and that way I can clear it later on. It's a little bit cold out today. I think it's like 58, 60, somewhere around there. So this paint's not going to dry as fast as it would if it was like 70 or 80. It's been 80 in the past few days, so it's just a weird day where it's kind of colder. So I want to get this on, let it sit up and flash correctly before I go on to the next step. So I want to give myself enough time to do this. So I want to get to it. I'm going to crank the tunes, and I'll show you along the way of how this thing is coming out. So everything is covered, 1 coat of sealer. It's pretty much tacked off to the point where I can start laying color. I've already messed with the color. I've got it pretty close. I'm gonna do 1 coat. I know I'm gonna have to mix some more paint up, so the color I've already got is gonna be like the ground coat for it. And like I said, everything I do from here on out, even the sealer color, I am making it a note on the paper. That way, if I ever come back to this, because like I said, sooner or later I'm going to be painting the whole car this color and doing some graphics and stuff on it. So I'm making all the little notes I can to help me remember, because I don't know if it's going to be next week I'm going to do it, or if it's going to be 2 years down the line or a year. So painting a lot of stuff all the time, it's good to make notes of everything you do. All the little details matter. So like I said, the first round of paint is going to be the guide coat, to kind of just cover it. This color covers pretty decently with this sealer because I've already done the spray out card for it, and that told me, hey, I need to make some adjustments to where I want it to be. It's a totally custom color. There's not even anything out there remotely, I think, of this color, because I'm just picking what I want off the bank and what I want to make it look like in my head and painting it. But the color itself is a color. I mean, everybody uses the color, but I am adding my own little touches to it. So I'm going to get some color on this thing. I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like in sealer, because we're wondering what your sealer coat is supposed to look like. It's supposed to look uniform. All 1 coat, 1 color. Nothing is showing through. None of the green that was on this is showing through. You got to get, engine bay is a little bit different than painting it outside of a car, because you do have to, especially in this engine bay, you got to get back there in those little tight corners. So especially when you're spraying your paint, do not freak out when you're using more paint than you think you should, especially on an engine bay that is kind of complicated like this one, because you are going to be spraying a lot more base coat than you normally would on the outside of the car, because you got to get back inside those crannies, inside that tray, get it all 1 color. So you're going to be spending more time doing it, and you're going to be spending more paint and more coats to get it covered and making sure everything is fully covered, 1 coat, all the same color. Because the last thing you want to do is go to clear this thing, you clear it, and you find out the next day or whatever that you forgot to hit an area, or make it all colored, and you still got sealer showing through it. So you just want to take your time. Bays, like I said, are a little bit more complicated depending on the car. You just want to make sure everything is covered in one coat. So as long as you take your time, if you need to, get a flashlight out, check all your nooks and crannies, and you'll be just fine. Just take your time. And your bay is a little bit harder just because of all the areas and everything that you need to get into to get it covered. And you can't really jump in the middle of this thing and start going to town, especially when you're clearing, because you don't want to hit anything. So I've been crawling under the ground, all that other fun stuff to get all this covered. And I just want to show you guys, and I'm going to go on to spraying some color, and then I will show you what it looks like. So stay tuned. All right, so I just got done spraying the color on the bay. I want to show you guys what I put in it before I show you the actual color. So here's what I put in it. We got S208, which is the Eclipse Orange. SS01, which is it's a metallic metal jewels agent. So it's just a really heavy metallic base. And then I've got XS44, which is almost like I don't know if I picked ocean blue. No, it's just a regular blue that I picked to put in it. And I have a FX04, which is just another coarse silver FX. So just to give it that bite, when the sun hits it, it's gonna shimmer and it's gonna look like it's got really heavy metal flake in it. Not really thick metal flake, just a lot of it is what I mean by that. So it's not like bass boat flake or anything like that. And then I took a little bit of this sun gold dry pearl, and I just did a couple little dabs in it, and then obviously I reduced it, and I put 3 coats of it on, covered really, really well. The sealer was, I would call it like a light to medium gray, somewhere in between there. So I want to show you guys what it actually looks like. I haven't clear coated the card yet, but I'm going to put some wax and grease remover on it. That way you guys can see what it's going to look like out in the sun, and I'm going to have you guys look at it with the light on it. So give me 1 second. So this is what it looks like. You can tell it's got a lot of flake in it, just pearl pretty much. It's not really flake. It does have a little bit of coarse flake in it, but that is going to be the color. I'm going to show you guys the bay here in a second, but I just wanted to let you guys see what it looks like. Now this is just the first step. I am going to be putting that same liquid pearl that I got here. I'm going to be making that up as a tri-coat. And what I mean by that, I'm going to be making it a tri-stage, the third stage, which is just a couple coats of that blue made as a pretty much like a tri-stage is what I'm trying to say. So I've got enough base coat nebula to do that with it. So I'll probably put like 2 coats over it, but that's why I'm doing a spray out, so I can see how much I need to put in there, because I want it to look like out in the sun from side to side. I want to have that blue shimmer to it, and that's how I want to do it. Putting it in that base was fine. It gave the little sparkles a blue sparkle, but I want to give it a really nice shimmer. So I'm going to do that after this base dries. It's still drying, even though it might look dry. It's not clear coated yet, so this is what the bay looks like. I guess you would call it, it's not a tangerine orange by any means. It doesn't have that candy effect like that tangerine orange does. But when you clear coat this, it's really going to shine. And here it's kind of dark. It's really not bright in here by any means, even though I've got lights everywhere. Let me brighten this up. All right, there you go. So you just really got to take your time to get inside all the nooks and crannies. So my advice for you guys, on order to paint something like this, with how complicated it is and everything, I started out with going in the hard spots first. Anywhere I thought the paint would be the hardest to get to, I would do a good coat of that first and try to get that covered as much as I possibly could, like in the tray and everything. Did all that stuff first, and then I went around and painted it normally like I would anything else. And then all the extra overspray, I guess you would call it, anything extra that got back into those tight spots is just bonus. And it made me, it makes you know that it's fully covered. Because if you sat that back there and covered that spot first and then let paint hit it afterwards, it's fully covered. So anywhere that I did pretty much any of that underneath these rails was kind of tricky to get to and cover them. Underneath where the subframe sits, I had to get on my back and kind of just spray it. The tunnel, I pretty much just dusted it in there. So, and all this stuff back here, I just kind of went through and I just dusted it on there. So yeah, but just want to show you guys that, because that is pretty much all of it. It's just, it's that simple. So you're just spraying it and just making sure you're constantly moving and everything constantly gets covered. Checking it with the light, make sure everything. I can already tell that I did not put enough coats on this rail right here, so I'm gonna go back through and hit that. But that's not anything you're gonna see anyways. That's gonna be hidden, so I'm not really too worried about that. But anywhere underneath the rails up on the top of the core support, I made sure I got that covered really well. Yeah, but other than that, that's pretty much it, guys. I'm gonna wait for this to dry, put on that tri-coat stage like I was talking about. And what I'm gonna do with that, I'm not gonna really get kind of crazy with it. I'm just gonna paint it just like I'm, normal. I'm not gonna try to get into all those spots, because that stuff's gonna fly everywhere and it's gonna actually stick to everything that's already on it. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna mix that up. But on another, something totally different, this is pretty much the first time I've used that exhaust wall that I got. If you've been watching for a little bit, I got an exhaust wall a while back. I haven't really used it because I haven't had anything to paint. The truck was already pretty much done by the time I got this thing put together, and it's worked well. You can kind of tell by all the orange overspray getting stuck to it. So it is sucking. It's hard to open up the front door of the shop with this thing on because it's sucking so much air. So I'm gonna usually you could tell when you're doing a full car, like an outside of a car, you can tell how well something's gonna work when you do that. But when I clear coat this is really gonna be the deciding factor how well that thing works, because clear coat is heavy, it likes to linger around, likes to go everywhere. So if that thing sucks it out pretty quick, then I think we'll be all right in the future for all this. So yeah, I'm gonna get to mixing that second coat, or that tri-coat up, and put 2 coats of it on there. I might do one to see what it looks like, and then we'll go from there. And then after that, we're gonna let this thing dry for an hour, and we'll come back in and we're gonna clear coat this thing. So stay with me. It's with 2 coats of pearl on it. Kind of see it's got that blue shimmer to it. It's exactly what we're looking for. The fan's still going, but I can show you guys the car. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it looks like a little bit of blue on top. Like I said, just 2 coats of that. And now it's ready. About 10 minutes, I'm gonna clear coat that. The first coat especially when you're clearing something like this. Let me turn the fan off real quick. So, when you're ready for clear coat, when you're doing something like pretty complicated where it's not just a flat surface, you got to get in a lot of tight spots, you kind of want to treat it the same as when you were trying to build up your color. You want to hit the areas first that are really tight to get to. You want to make sure they're nice and covered. You don't want any dryness, because that first coat, if you put it on dry, you're pretty much not going to be able to get it out through the next coats, because it's going to be so dry to start with. So you want to put it on there, I always say like a medium wet. My first coat is kind of like a tack coat, but I paint really fast, and when I actually pull the trigger, I pull the trigger and I lay it on there. So like my first coat is, like I said, it's a little bit of a tack coat for me, and I don't even consider it a first coat, but I do go in there and really quickly go through and put a really nice medium wet coat on there, and then I immediately right after it will go back over it and put that really nice slick coat on there, and then let it, you know, flash off, and then put your next coat on after that. I'm gonna put 3 coats on, not including the first coat, but I want to be doing this constantly, so I'm not going to really show you guys, because I got to get inside all those nooks and crannies and everything, and making sure everything's completely covered. So it's going to take me a little bit of time to go through and clear coat this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and get to it. I just want to show you guys that color with some wax and grease over it. And that's another thing, if you guys don't know, when you're doing spray out cards, don't clear coat it every time unless you're giving it to the customer. If you're just doing it for yourself and you need something to kind of represent a clear over top of your spray out, just grab some wax and grease. They make some stuff called Quick Check. It's, you know, I think wax and grease stays wetter longer than Quick Check, and it looks better. Quick Check just, I know it dulls out really quick, but wax and grease, you can keep on hitting it after the paint's dry, and it'll show you a representation of what it looked like with the clear coat on there. So just a little bit of a trick for you if you ever wondered. So that's why I use that. But yeah, I'm going to get to mixing some clear up, and we're going to get to spraying this.